Hey, I'm Kirby,
I'm Floyd.
and this is the Rising Revolution show. And on this first show, we're going to kind of explain where we're coming from. So I hope we don't bore you. But anyway.
Okay. I mean, some of you folks already know us. Some new folks are going to be coming on board every time we post a new show. So we just thought people should know a little bit about who we are, how we got to know each other, etc., and what our political views and cultural views as well are.
Exactly. And we don't always agree on everything, but we agree on a lot.
Yeah, which is why we're buds.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Floyd Bayne. Many of you already know that. I ran for Congress 2 times, once in 2010, once in 2012. First time as an independent, second time in the Republican primary. And in both instances, I was trying to get rid of Eric Cantor. I'd like to think my efforts actually ultimately led to him being ousted by Dave Bratt.
Me too.
I consider myself a classical liberal. I believe
a liberal. What?
Yeah, classical. Oh, that's exactly. See, most people hear that, and that's exactly what they hear. They don't hear classical; they hear liberal.
Right.
Well, classical liberal in the vein of a Thomas Jefferson or a Patrick Henry or George Mason. I believe people should be able to live their lives as they choose to live it, not as the government chooses for them. As long as you don't harm others, as long as you don't infringe on someone else's rights, have at it. I also believe in fiscal responsibility. The government shouldn't take my money out of my paycheck or your paycheck or his paycheck and use it for anything. That's not the government's role.
Mm-hmm.
If they need money for something, there are ways of doing it without taking it out of my paycheck.
Correct.
Very limited government, and I say very limited. I'm not an anarchist, not yet, anyway.
I'm darn close, but
yeah,
I'm not.
We're both leaning that way. But I do believe, at least militarily, we need some form of government. We've got too many big bombs and planes and ships and stuff out there to not have anybody, just running around willy-nilly with this stuff.
And there are arguments of other ways in a government to provide that, and we'll probably get into stuff like that with, we'll have guests that are anarchists, volunteerists. Did I say that correct?
I think so.
Yeah. All sorts of limited government, libertarian types of views, non-state, semi-state, like I said, anarchists, minarchist, which is someone who is for almost anarchist. I consider myself a minarchist. I would consider myself a classic liberal too. And see, the thing is, you used to not have to say classic liberal back when Jefferson and them, it was called a liberal, but it didn't mean what it meant today. Now it means a big government person. And the reason why that is because when the progressives started in the world and in the US, they kind of stole the term liberal because they said these big government policies would bring liberty to people. So they stole the term liberal. And so now everybody knows it as liberal, as, big government guys. So we got to add classic liberal. So technically you could just say Floyd is a liberal, old school style Jefferson, but yeah, by today's standard, he's a classic liberal.
Well, yeah, it's important to understand history and where these terms come about. Too many people nowadays want to pigeonhole you. They want to put you in this little box, which makes it easier for them to try to deal with you. And by putting you in that box, they think they know everything that you believe and everything that you espouse and exactly what you're going to say. And what really fascinates me is how many people, Kirby and I both, managed to piss off both from the left and the right because they think they know who we are.
Mm-hmm. And I've been called a liberal. I've been called a conservative. I've been called a, evil right-winger. I've been called a Nazi. I've been called a socialist.
Sometimes in the same thread.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to deal with. And what we're saying is, talk to us. If you have questions, ask them. We'll try to explain as much as we can about where we're coming from. But going back into history and the founding of the country, if you looked at people like Jefferson and many of the founding fathers, they were called liberals at that time. The conservatives were actually the British and the Loyalists.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was big government.
Yeah. So if you need to use terms to help you understand where someone's coming from, classical liberal would be the one I would apply to myself.
And there was a time when conservatives, once liberals, once the big government people became known as liberals, conservatives were actually considered limited government, and they didn't want all the but then the 80s kind of changed some of that, maybe a further back when it became the religious right, kind of turned it into more big government. In other words, more of a big government thing. And actually, even before that, a lot of people, you hear the term neoconservative. Well, Bill Kristol's dad, I think it's Irvin Kristol, he actually was a leftist. He was a Trotskyite. People, you might not know what that is. Trotsky was a communist, but he was kind of like not the same kind of communist as Stalin. But anyway, Kristol was a Trotskyite, and he didn't like the left because they were non-interventionists. So the people that are now interventionist liberals, big government liberals, they were not interventionist enough for him. So he says, I'm going to go take over the conservative movement, which was at that time, very anti-foreign interventionist, very anti-war. And he took it over and he switched it. So, and then the liberals kind of became, the anti-interventionists. Now they're all interventionists. It's like, we're all communists now, that old saying.
Well, the bottom line for me is this. I don't think I know how to run your life for you better than you know how to run it for yourself. When I ran for office, I wasn't running for office because I think I'm smarter than the average bear, or because I think I should be the one telling you what to do, or I should be the one making the laws. In fact, if you're one of these people who calls yourself a conservative or a liberty activist or whatever, and you say, well, I believe in liberty and limited government, but yeah, if you use the word "but" when you're talking about liberty and freedom,
that negates your whole previous sentence.
Yeah, you and I probably aren't going to get along very well. Again, unless you're hurting someone else or infringing on their rights, what you choose to do with your life and your body is your business. If you suffer for it, then that's on you. I can't help you with that. If you benefit from it, good for you. Mm-hmm. But the pursuit of happiness means different things to different people.
Right.
Your happiness may be far different from what makes me happy.
Now, I'm a Christian, and a lot of Christians, they believe that, well, don't drink, don't smoke, don't chew, don't go with girls that do, and that's fine. I don't believe in doing that stuff either.
Did you just make that up?
No, it's actually a saying. Really.
Okay. I've never heard that.
Yeah, I don't believe in drinking, drugs, anything like that. But I wish they didn't exist, really. But here's the deal: they do exist, and I don't have the right to tell people not to do it just because I, don't like it or don't care for it. I don't have the right to tell other people you can't do that unless when they do it, they harm me. But it's not the doing it that is the problem. It's what they do when they do it. So I'm not going to say no one can do it, because there are people that don't do bad stuff when they're on it, and there are people that do. And I believe in taking care of the bad behavior for the people that do bad stuff, not because of the drug or the alcohol, but because of their bad actions. So yeah, when their actions harm others, then the government can step in. But when their actions don't harm anyone, no. So
yeah, and for those of you out there who think Kirby and I never disagree on anything, you'll find that we probably the one place we're going to butt heads is going to be on things like cultural issues, especially regarding religion. Kirby told you he's a Christian. I'm an atheist. Now, I don't go up and introduce myself to people. Hi, I'm Floyd Bayne, the atheist.
And he doesn't hate religion either. He just hates.
I'm sitting here with this guy.
He just hates people trying to force their religion.
Force it, yeah. It's.
Me too. I hate that too.
I think my favorite meme I've seen so far is religion is like a. Can I say this word?
Oh, no.
I'll try. We'll edit it out if it's bad. Religion's like a penis. It's nice to have one. It's okay to be proud of it. But if you pull it out and start waving it around, we might have a problem. So yeah, again, it's what makes you happy and what works for you in your life. Have at it, but don't expect me to believe everything you believe.
And the other thing too, last thing I'll say on that is the gospel itself. Jesus never tells people to force what I tell you on other people. No. He always talks to you and tells you to do it, and he tells you to share it, but only if those people want to hear it. He doesn't say force it down their throat. Nowhere. So, in the New Testament, show me anywhere where Jesus says that, and I'll be like, okay.
And before we close out this section, just so you'll know how we came to know each other, when I ran my first campaign back starting in 2009, I made it clear through some friends that I needed someone to help me with computer stuff. I needed an IT guy. I didn't understand how the whole social networking thing worked. I didn't know how to build a website. Figure anything to do with computers, you can assume I didn't know how it worked.
No, he doesn't.
And how in fact did you?
What happened was, I originally, the previous election in 2008, I was supporting Eric Cantor because I believed all the press, all the limited government, all the conservative press, but I really didn't have time, and I guess I really don't have time now, but I make the time. I really didn't look up how he voted and what he was really like. But then I started to do that after I had kind of heard about Ron Paul in 2008. I started saying, wait a minute, some of what he is doing and saying isn't consistent with what I believe, which is very similar to Ron Paul. And so I'm like, they don't seem to go together. How can I support this guy and then also support this guy? And so the cognitive dissonance started fading away, and I started noticing this. And so I'm like, I can't support this guy anymore. I wish there was somebody running. So a friend of mine, this person kind of got out of politics for health reasons, so I won't mention their name. If you know who it is, then you know who it is. They were like, there is a guy. And I'm like, really? Tell me. So I looked it up, and I was like, I think you were using the website for mostly just kind of like a blog. And I was like, and you had a friend that was really good at doing it, but he didn't really have the time because he was doing it as a favor. So I was like, so he really couldn't give you what you needed. He could have it probably if you were a paid customer, but that's understandable. So I'm like, I gotta fix this website, I'm like, hey man, let me help your website. So I talked to you, and you came over.
Yeah.
Before the website, I'm getting ahead of myself. I invited you over, and you came over. I was like, whoa, this dude wants to come over to my house. Wow, this is interesting. So he comes over, and he talks, and I tell him what issues are important to me, and anything that I know him better now. So there are probably some things he probably didn't even agree with, but he didn't bash me on it. He just told me how he felt, and I'm like, oh, really? I just told you I believe this, and you told me you don't believe that. I was like, that's refreshing. But then the majority of the stuff we agreed, I'd say probably 90%. So I'm like, oh, this is the guy. So I'm like, all right, I have someone to vote for. And then that's when I started noticing the website, and I called him and said, hey, let's. And then his guy, since he knew he didn't have the time, he released it to me, and I took over and did all the social media. And I'll be honest, a lot of it I learned kind of on the way, but I'm pretty fast learner of that kind of stuff. And so did the website. So I was, did the social media, the website, and some political advising and stuff, because I've been involved in different campaigns before. So I kind of knew different things.
And you touched on something that I think we need to go into a little deeper, and that is, I was running for office. I wanted to get elected, right? I mean, I wasn't just doing this to spin my wheels, and I needed his help. So when I sit down and he tells me about his background and what he believes, and that he's a Christian, and et cetera, and then he asked me, what church do you go to?
I did.
Yeah, you did. You asked me that. And I said, I don't. And Kirby kind of leaned back and said, oh, why is that? I told him.
Yeah.
And he sat there for a minute and just kind of looked at me, and he said, you know what? At least you're honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
I can support that. And that's the key for me. Whether it was running for office, whether it's posting on Facebook or on my blog or doing these videos here, it's easier to be honest with people than to lie to them and try to remember all the lies you told them, who you told them to. I lost votes in both elections. I know I did, because I told people things they didn't want to hear.
Yep.
They asked me questions. I know what they wanted to hear.
That's why we get attacked all the time when we're online or we're discussing stuff, because we don't tell people what they want to hear. We don't jump on the latest bandwagon. We don't jump. We don't jump on like the Trump wagon, the whatever wagon.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was simply a matter of my conscience has to be clear. I have to feel good about who I am. And so if you ask me a question, I know what you want to hear. I mean, I could have easily told him, oh, Yeah, I go to church. I go, so-and-so church down the street.
Yeah.
And that
He goes once a year.
happy.
He goes once a year just so he can say he goes to church, like a lot of politicians do.
It's like a lot of politicians who wear their religion on their sleeve come election time, but then you never.
Or even the ones that don't, they'll go, "Are you a Christian?" Like whoever. I won't name a name right now, but they'll say, "Are you a Christian, Mr. Senator, Mr. President?" "Oh yeah, I go to so and so church." "Well, how many times have you been?" And how often do you pray? And all that kind of stuff. And I bet you, if you found the truth, they're probably not believing that at all. They know they need to believe that to get elected.
So for me, like me or dislike me, agree or disagree, you will know where I stand on an issue. And if I don't understand an issue, if I'm not up to speed, or I don't know something for sure, I'm not going to pretend like I do.
Same here.
So, you maybe can educate me. There's some things I could learn. So I don't pretend for one instant that I'm the smartest guy.
I learn things from my children all the time. They know lots of stuff I don't know.
Yeah. So that's pretty much who we are. We're just a couple of guys who are tired of what's going on in the country, tired of people being willfully ignorant. Look, you've got this thing in front of you called a computer. If you are ignorant of the issues facing you and your country today, it's because you choose to be ignorant.
Yep.
There's no excuse for it. If you don't know something, look it up. Take the time. Don't believe anything I say just because I say it. Don't believe Kirby just because he says it. If you doubt us, look it up.
And with the technology, even if you don't have time on your phone, you could set up feeds from news websites that you trust or semi-trust, or even ones you don't trust because you want to get the whole, and have all those headlines come in and just click one, and so you could keep up with the kind of, what's going on, and you can, it's not that hard really. Even going on Facebook, a lot of times you can just see news stories, and there are different websites you can learn about that, and you don't always have to trust them either, like reason.com or fee.org, and they have a lot of good stuff, and I generally trust them. But sometimes if I see something that I don't think sounds right with something they're reporting, I'll look them up too, make sure they're telling the truth.
All I can tell you is that and I'm paraphrasing a Patrick Henry quote, that my feet are guided by the light of experience. If I see something in the news, hear something on the TV that doesn't make sense to me, I look at that. Number one, understand this. If the media tells me something, I don't believe it. If the government tells me something, I don't believe it. I will look further. I will dig deeper to find out the truth. But knowing history as I do, having experienced a government that lies to me on a regular basis throughout my life, I don't trust them. So I'm going to look and find out what the truth is. So I'm going to apply experience. And I'm going to apply common sense in determining what I do and don't believe. And all I would ask you to do is the same thing.
Yep.